In 1984, Nike was a successful sportswear company, but it wasn't the giant we know today. Adidas was bigger, Converse dominated basketball, and Nike was still fighting to establish itself. Then a 21-year-old basketball player entered the NBA. His name was Michael Jordan. Nike wanted him badly, Jordan wanted Adidas. What happened next would change basketball, sneaker culture, advertising, and Nike forever, because Nike wasn't simply about to sign a basketball player. It was about to create something the sports world had never seen before, a brand built around an athlete. This is the story of how Nike went from a small Oregon startup to one of the most powerful brands in the world. The story actually begins 20 years earlier. In 1964, Phil Knight and his former track coach Bill Bowerman founded a company called Blue Ribbon Sports. Knight had an unusual idea. Instead of trying to immediately manufacture shoes, the company would import running shoes from Japan and sell them in America. Knight began selling shoes directly to runners. Sometimes, that meant putting boxes of shoes in his car and driving around to track meets. There was no massive headquarters, no huge advertising budget, just a young entrepreneur trying to convince athletes that there was a better shoe. Bowerman brought something else to the partnership. He was obsessed with making shoes better, lighter, more comfortable, more efficient. He experimented constantly, even creating a revolutionary waffle-patterned sole after looking at his wife's waffle iron. That obsession with innovation would eventually become part of Nike's DNA. But Blue Ribbon Sports was about to become something much bigger. By the early 1970s, Knight knew the company couldn't depend forever on selling someone else's shoes. It needed its own identity. And in 1971, that identity began to take shape. Nike. The name came from the Greek goddess of victory, and the company needed a logo. Knight turned to Carolyn Davidson, a graphic design student at Portland State University. She created what would become one of the most recognizable symbols on Earth, the swoosh. Knight reportedly wasn't even in love with it at first, but he decided they needed something immediately. The price? $35. That simple checkmark would eventually become worth billions in brand recognition. Nike now had a name, it had a logo, and it had a philosophy, but it still needed something incredibly important: attention. Nike understood something early that would eventually separate it from its competitors. Athletes didn't just want equipment, they wanted to believe they could perform better. So Nike began putting athletes at the center of its brand. One of the most important early examples was runner Steve Prefontaine, whose personality and success helped make running, and Nike, more culturally relevant. But Nike's biggest opportunity wasn't running, it was basketball. And in 1984, Nike found the athlete who could take the company somewhere completely different. Michael Jordan was entering the NBA as the third overall pick in the 1984 draft. He was already a star coming out of North Carolina, but he hadn't played a single NBA game, and Nike wasn't Jordan's first choice. Jordan wanted Adidas. His agent, David Falk, pushed him to at least listen to Nike's pitch. Nike eventually offered Jordan a 5-year deal worth roughly $500,000 per year, plus royalties. At the time, that was an enormous commitment for a rookie. But Nike wasn't simply offering Jordan money. They were offering him something different, a shoe designed specifically around him, a brand built around his identity, and an opportunity to become more than an athlete. He could become a brand. Nike had made a huge bet. Now they needed Jordan to make it work. Then came the Air Jordan, and Nike knew they had something special. During Jordan's rookie season, the shoes became part of the story before the first Air Jordan even officially hit stores. The NBA objected to the black and red look of the shoe Jordan wore, and Nike turned the controversy into marketing. Instead of hiding the controversy, they used it. The message was simple: Jordan wasn't just following the rules, he was breaking them, and young fans wanted to be part of it. When the Air Jordan 1 hit stores in 1985, Nike's expectations were quickly blown away. Nike reportedly expected roughly $3 million in sales. Instead, the shoe generated tens of millions of dollars within its first months and more than $100 million in its first year, according to estimates reported by Forbes. Nike had discovered something powerful. Michael Jordan wasn't simply selling shoes, he was selling a feeling. As Jordan's career exploded, so did Nike. Championships, dunk contests, highlight reels, commercials, the iconic "Be Like Mike" era. Jordan became larger than basketball, and Nike transformed that popularity into an entirely new business. The Jordan brand eventually became its own powerhouse within Nike. Decades later, Michael Jordan would continue earning enormous royalties from the partnership. The rookie who once preferred Adidas had become one of the most valuable athletes in the history of endorsements. But here's the most important part: Nike didn't just sell Michael Jordan's shoes, it changed the entire relationship between athletes and brands. After Jordan, athletes weren't simply endorsers, they could become the brand. Nike's rise wasn't really about one shoe, and it wasn't even just about Michael Jordan, it was about understanding something other companies hadn't fully figured out. People don't always buy products because they're the best. Sometimes, they buy what the product represents. Nike sold performance, but it also sold ambition, confidence, competition, the desire to become better, and Michael Jordan became the perfect personification of that idea. A small company that once sold running shoes out of a car had become a global empire. And the swoosh became more than a logo, it became a symbol. Nike didn't just change the shoe business, it changed the way the world sells athletes, and it all started with one enormous bet on a young basketball player who didn't even want to wear Nike. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe to Hidden Empires Behind the Brand, where we uncover the rise, strategy, and the untold stories behind the world's most influential companies. Because every empire starts with one idea, but only a few change the world.